They called it harmless fun, ding dong ditch. Kids sneaking up to doors, ringing the bell, and sprinting away before anyone could answer. It was supposed to be a joke, a dare, a burst of adrenaline that faded into laughter. But on a quiet night in Houston, what should have been a prank became a tragedy so senseless people across the nation struggled to understand it. This is the story of Julian Guzman, 11 years old, full of life, and gone in seconds. It was just after 9 p.m. The air was thick with that Texas humidity that clings to your skin. Julian was with three neighborhood kids, two boys his age, and an older teen cousin who was watching over them. School was out the next morning, and the night felt wide open. They spent the evening playing video games and arguing about which NBA player would win in a one-on-one, Luka Doncic or Steph Curry. But someone brought up a game they used to play when they were much smaller. Ding Dong Ditch. They joked about how they were too old for it now. But that made it even funnier. Julian laughed the loudest, the kind of laugh that came from his belly and made everyone else laugh with him. They chose the street behind theirs, quiet, dimly lit, and lined with modest brick houses. Some even had Christmas lights still dangling from the roof after the holidays were long gone. The kind of place where nothing ever happens until something did. The boys picked a house at random, a single-story house, American flag hanging by the door, a porch light that flickered like a dying candle. Inside lived a man named Gonzalo Leon, 45 years old, recently divorced, and known by some neighbors as paranoid, always convinced that someone was watching him. The kids didn't know any of that. To them, it was just the next house on the block. Julian hesitated for a moment, then grinned. "I'll do it," he whispered. "Y'all better run fast." He tiptoed up the walkway, sneakers barely making a sound on the cold concrete. His friends crouched behind a parked pickup truck across the street. Julian reached out, tapped the doorbell twice. Ding dong! Ding dong! Then he turned and sprinted, laughing under his breath. What none of them saw was the shadow moving quietly behind the curtain. Inside the house, Gonzalo had been sitting in his recliner, a beer in one hand, his phone in the other, doom scrolling through crime stories and neighborhood watch posts. For months, he had been convinced his home would be targeted. He had a gun, legally owned, always nearby. When the doorbell rang, it didn't feel like kids playing. It felt like a threat. That's what he'd tell the police. He stood, his mind racing faster than reason. He yanked the blinds aside just in time to catch a blur of movement. A child-sized figure bolting across the yard. But fear doesn't measure height, it doesn't age a face, it just ignites. Gonzalo Leon unlocked his door and stormed outside, gun in hand. Julian wasn't fast enough that night. He'd almost made it behind the truck where his friends were hiding when the door banged open. "Hey!" a voice boomed. The boys froze. Julian turned, startled, unsure if he should laugh or apologize. But the man didn't ask questions. He didn't shout a warning. He lifted the gun with a shaky hand and pulled the trigger. One shot. It echoed through the neighborhood like thunder slicing a clear sky. Julian collapsed, eyes wide with surprise more than pain. His friends screamed his name, but their voices sounded distant, swallowed by the ringing silence that followed. Gonzalo stood there, breathing hard, the gun dangling at his side. His expression wasn't rage, it was disbelief, like he'd just woken up from a terrible dream and realized it was all real. A neighbor named Maria Torres heard the gunshot from inside her kitchen. She ran, barefoot, and saw the boys huddled around Julian. He'd been shot in the chest. She called 911 with trembling hands, yelling at the dispatcher, "He's just a baby! He's just a kid!" Paramedics arrived fast, but not fast enough. Julian was still breathing when they loaded him into the ambulance, but the life was slipping out of him like sand through your fingers. His mother wasn't even there yet. She would later say her worst nightmare wasn't a phone call, it was the silence before it. Julian was pronounced dead at the hospital. Police found Gonzalo sitting on his front steps, gun resting beside him, his face pale, his voice quiet. "I thought he was breaking in," he muttered. "I thought he was coming back." But no window was broken, no door forced, no one threatened him. He had stepped outside, he had aimed, and he had fired. He was arrested on the spot. The boys who survived gave statements through tears. One of them was only 10. The teen who was watching them kept saying the same sentence over and over. "We were just playing. We were just playing." Julian's mother, Daniela, arrived at the hospital wearing slippers and pajamas. She didn't remember driving there. She didn't remember who told her he was gone. She only remembered pressing her palm to his cheek and realizing he was already cold. Julian loved soccer. He loved hot Cheetos. He slept with one sock on and one off, always. He still had baby teeth that hadn't fallen out. His last text to his mom had just said, "Can we have pancakes tomorrow?" The next morning, she sat in his empty room and listened to the silence. Houston has seen tragedy before, but this one hit different. People struggled to wrap their minds around it. Some were angry, Others were stunned into speechlessness. Neighbors lit candles outside Julian's home. His backpack, still packed with school books, sat untouched on the dining table. Debates erupted online. Why was he out so late? Why would someone shoot without checking? Since when is childhood a crime? The police chief called it preventable, heartbreaking, and inexcusable. Gonzalo Leon was charged with murder. His lawyers talked about fear, about crime in the neighborhood, about mistaken threats. But persecutors pointed to the fact: no forced entry, no danger, and no warning. The 911 recording captured the children screaming, begging for help. It captured silence on Gonzalo's end. People asked one question over and over and over again. Even if it was a prank, does that justify a death? Julian used to believe monsters weren't real. He told his little cousin that ghosts were just dead people who got bored. He wasn't doing drugs. He wasn't breaking windows. He wasn't armed. He was being a kid. The kind of kid adults always say they miss from the good old days. But childhood in that moment met a bullet. And the world was left with a truth as sharp as shattered glass. We don't just lose children to crime. Sometimes we lose them to fear. Julian Guzman was 11. His life ended at a doorstep. And what should have been a prank became a funeral. Not because of evil, but because of a trigger. A split-second decision, and a man who forgot the difference between anger and annoyance. Julian's story isn't just about one night. It's about the cost of fear, the fragility of innocence, and the choices that can't be undone. If stories like this matter to you, don't let them disappear into silence. Make sure to subscribe to this channel, share the story, like and give a comment so that others can also hear more stories like this. I remain your host. Thank you.